Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, world. Welcome once again to Tuesday Talk with Key West Lou. I am your host, Louis Patrone. I greet you another week. We've got a hell of a show tonight. That's the only way I can describe it. I am going to share with you some things you have been totally unaware of. No one has told you. Perhaps our government does not want us to hear. The media is not telling us. And these things are very scary. They're devastating. You will find them hard to believe. First, though, this is a call-in show. If you want to call in and talk with me, agree with me, disagree with me, say anything you like, the number's on the screen in front of you, 646-478-5731, 646-478-5731. Let's get going. I wish to talk first tonight about the Catholic Church of yesteryear. Not today, but a little bit of today, but really back when it all got started. I am a Catholic, by the way. I'm a fallen-away Catholic, product of a Catholic education, grammar school, high school, and college. I just wanted to share that with you as I share these things with you. Did you know, at the time of Christ, there were no priests? Even after Jesus Christ died, there were no priests. Priests did not come into being until around 100 years after the death of Christ, around 100 AD, 125 AD. The men who followed God, the disciples, the ones who preached, were considered holy men. They reached a point, though, where, the congregation got big. There were more and more Catholics 100 years later, and these holy men said, and maybe this was because they thought it was the correct thing to do, maybe this was God's way, or maybe they just thought they needed some sort of a distinction to elevate them above the masses. In any event, the holy men got together and said, we got to call ourselves something different from the masses. And they said, we shall call ourselves priests. You're not going to find the word priest in the Bible, my friends. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John never talked about priests. Okay, so now we got priests 100 years after Christ, and they said, we got to have some sort of a ceremony so a person becomes a priest. We'll ordain them, and that's where the word ordinations came from. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is there is God's law and there is man's law. God's law is what's written in the Bible. Man's law is what man decides he wants to do to help him pursue whatever's said in the Bible. It is man's interpretation of God's words, which in some instances is correct, in more instances than not is incorrect, or it's something they need to operate a hierarchy in the church. Whatever it is, these are some of this thing about priests wasn't in the Bible, ordinations weren't in the Bible. Jesus Christ never talked about these things. Now we come to celibacy. Where did celibacy come from? It didn't come from the Bible. It didn't come from Christ. Remember, most of the disciples, if not all of them, were married men. They had children. Number one, celibacy, understand, is not a vow. And I'm a product of a Catholic education, I always thought it was a vow. It's like getting married. You swear between yourself and God. It's nothing more than a promise to your bishop that you will not have sex. That's what celibacy is in the Catholic Church, a promise to your bishop. It does not have the elevated status of a vow. Now, follow this. For 1,000 years, 1,000+ years after Christ, priests married. The priests were all getting married. They had children. When they made priests and they made ordinations around 100 AD, they didn't say priests cannot get married, they must be celibate. They just decided, maybe later years, that they would do this. It was around 1500 before they really decided to follow this rule that you couldn't marry. So for over 1,000 years, you had priests getting married and having children, as well as the popes. The popes got married. Not only did the popes have legitimate children, they had illegitimate children. The popes were having sex. Then came 1074 AD, and Gregory VII, he was a pope, said, those who were to be ordained from that point forward as priests could not marry. Well, you would assume that from 1074 on, they didn't get married if they were going to become a priest. But no one listened to the Pope Gregory at the time, and it took more than 500 years before it started having an impact that a priest maybe should not be married. So by the year 1500, half the priests were not married, but that meant the other half were. This thing was still holding on, because this wasn't God's word. This was man's word, either interpreting the Bible or being the way the church and the hierarchy wanted to run the church operation at the time. Now let's talk about homosexuality. Big deal. We have pedophiles today. Homosexuality has been a problem in the church. This has nothing to do with how you interpret the Bible. This just has to do with man and whatever his inclinations are. 6 popes in the history of the church, 6 popes in the history of the church were openly homosexual. One even lived in the Vatican, as it was at the time, and shared a bed with his partner. Abortions. Man, abortions are big. Let's talk about abortions. We know, the furor in this country alone, forget worldwide, about abortions, and even the killing of babies in infesticide. Would you believe that back when, and let me start this way, though. I say when it comes to abortions, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Let me repeat it. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. What am I referring to? Back in the early days, and up until around 1000 A.D., the nunneries and the monasteries were abortion mills. You heard me. The nunneries and the monasteries were abortion mills. The priests were having sex with the nuns. The priests were having sex with women who were not nuns. Can't have these babies. So they were running abortions. They were having abortions in both the nunneries and the monasteries. And if perchance a baby was born, they killed the babies. That's how it was. And then a pope at the time called a council. This was in 836 A.D., because every time the church has a problem, they call a council. It's a big meeting, and he says, no more abortions, no more killing of child babies in the nunneries and the monasteries, and it was basically followed. Now, what about women becoming priests? What does the good book say about women becoming priests? The Bible says nothing about whether a woman can become a priest or not. In the early days, and I'm going up to 1500 A.D., women were priests. They were ordained as priests. And then all of a sudden, around 1500, the male priests got together, the hierarchy of the church at that time, and they did not like the influence of the women who were priests. They thought they were getting a little too pushy and a little too big, so they said, no more women as priests. Just like that, okay? But women were priests for 1,500 years following Christ. They were, even before, they were ordained from 100 on, but even before that, they were the holy people too, the holy men, holy women, who spoke what Jesus had said up until the year roughly 100 when they formally had priests and ordinations. There's no reason today why a woman cannot be a pope, why she cannot be a priest. It was there for the first 1,500 years. It's man's law, not God's law, that says this. There is an exception to this, and I believe exceptions prove the point. Czechoslovakia, 1972, very heavy communist nation at the time, many concentration camps. There was a women's concentration camp, heavy, and these women are basically Catholics in the concentration camp, communist concentration camp, and they needed a priest, but I don't know what the problem was, the church or the government. You can't have male priests in there helping these women, so the Pope created an exception in 1972, and he ordained a woman by the name of Ludmila Jararova as a priest to help these women, and he also had ordained at the same time several other women to be priests and help these women. That's all I want to tell you about the Catholic Church of yesteryear. And the point I want to make is all this stuff we're getting isn't God's law, it's man's law. And I'm going to tell you, the Muslims have the same problem. Let's move on to China, and we're talking about religion now. China, this is very interesting. What I'm going to share with you is amazing. Mao Zedong, he was the first leader of Communist China. He was leader from 1949 to 1976. A real tough guy. He wanted to eliminate religion. He thought he had eliminated religion. He wanted his people to be atheists. There was no God. You are an atheist. And initially, many of them believed it. And if you even look today, a lot of Chinese people, when they list their religions, they were listed as an atheist. But what happened, you can't suppress God. So what happened is, over the course of the years, it's built up. There was a Christian community in China, and the social scientists, they tell us that by the year 2030, China will be the most Christian nation in the world. The most Christian nation in the world. In 1949, there were 1 million Protestants in China. In 2010, there were 58 million. The projected Protestant population in 2025, 11 years from now, is 160 million. The Christian population, and by Christian I'm referring to Catholic and Protestant, will exceed in 2025 247 million people. China will have the largest Christian population in the world, even greater than that of the United States. Okay, now I'm going to stay with Christianity for one more step. And when I said earlier in the show, some of the things you're going to hear tonight are shocking. You can't believe it. It's devastating. This is what I'm going to talk about now. And I'm going to speak of Christians, Catholics, Protestants, primarily Catholics though, who are being crucified. You know crucifixion, Jesus on the cross? Well, they're being crucified in certain parts of the world today for their religion. In Syria and Nigeria. And they're being crucified. You know, you got wars going on over there between Muslims against Muslims. The Muslims are crucifying other Muslims, but they're not Muslims. These people may be Syrian, Nigerian, they're Catholics, or they're Protestants, and they're being hung on crosses to die. And even the children, it has nothing to do with age. If you're a Christian child, you get hung on the cross. The Muslims dislike Christians. And it's the radical jihadists that are doing this in both situations, in both countries. Now, in Syria, in Nigeria, and in other Muslim countries, and I've talked about this the last 3 or 4 years on television, in the radio show, I've written about it, there have been church bombings, beatings of Catholics or Christians in the streets. It seems like the Muslims are getting back at us for the Crusades, because back in the Middle Ages, we went to the Middle East. You know, we were going to convert all these people, and we gave them pain and suffering, and now they're giving us pain and suffering in return. What goes around does come around sometime. Well, here's what I don't like about this. I don't like, number one, that they're crucifying Christians because they are Christians. And I don't like the fact that you and I don't know about this unless somebody like me or somebody else speaks about it. It seems to be, number one, that the Muslim groups, these radical jihadists, are the people that the United States and Saudi Arabia are supporting with money, guns, advice, and everything else. In other words, the people doing the hanging, and they're also beheading, by the way, and doing the beheading of the Christians, are the people we're supporting in both of these countries. Okay? A nun, a Catholic nun, Sister Rahida, Raghida, Catholic school, Damascus. All right, 2 young boys. The radical jihadists came up, they took these 2 boys, and they said to them, renounce your faith or be crucified. One of them was crucified. He would not renounce his God. And, make it even worse, they hung this kid and killed him on the cross in front of his father. And then they killed his father. Then this nun also reports in the city of Mahaba, I don't know where it is, but it's over there someplace, the Christians were being killed by the radical jihadists, the people we're supporting again, with money, guns, and advice. And they were killing men, women, and children. And then playing football with the heads of these people. You heard me. Then playing football with their heads. Now here's what I want to know. Why the silence? Why haven't we heard about it in the media, okay? We're sending dollars over there. We have a right to know. It's our tax dollars. The media has been quiet about this. They've been quiet for several weeks. They've been quiet about these crucifixions. The only one who spoke about the crucifixions was Fox. I can't believe it because they hide things, I think, but they didn't in this instance. And they only talked about it a little bit. They sort of fluffed it over. Let's tie this all together now. And it bothers me that the media isn't bringing this information here, which also leads me to believe there may be an arrangement between our government and the media to keep these things quiet. I don't know. Maybe they don't want the people aroused because the people in this country will get upset if we know the people we're giving money to in these countries and guns and advice are turning around and hanging people on crosses who are Christians because they won't renounce their faith and become a Muslim. We've read in the paper this week, and this is another thing that was late. Back on April 14th, all right, roughly 300 girls in Nigeria, differing ages up to the age of 17, were stolen from a school. And they were stolen by the radical jihadists again. The group we're supporting, by the way, okay? And we're not involved in this. We just learned about it in the last few days. Why didn't the media report it 2 weeks ago when it happened? Why aren't we helping to find these children? Doesn't mean we have to go to war. But look at the millions of dollars that were spent trying to find that Malaysian plane that went down over a month ago, and it still hasn't been found. These are as many people as had to be on that plane, roughly 300 girls. And now what are these radical jihadists, these Muslims, saying? They're saying we are going to take these girls and we're going to sell them as slaves. We're going to sell them in marriage to our militia. We can get $12 a piece for them, $12 a piece, and then they will be slaves, sexually and otherwise, to whoever buys them. I don't know. And I wonder, why didn't we hear about this sooner, any of this stuff? So understand, my friends, and you don't have to be a Catholic. You could be a Jew here, and you could be a Muslim who doesn't buy this stuff. People, Christians, are being crucified because of their religion. This is no different than the Jews going into the furnaces during World War II. It's wrong, and we're not told about it, and we're helping the people financially and otherwise who are doing it. This is a screwed up world. It all worries me. Now we're going to move on to Key West and something a little more pleasurable, perhaps. I smile. We had a Goblin Shark discovered off Stock Island, which is actually a part of Key West. It's the next island up from Key West. And a Goblin Shark. Well, what's the big deal about a Goblin Shark? Well, you had to see the picture of this shark. What happened was there was a shrimp boat out there. We have shrimp boats that go off Stock Island. They did it 100 years ago. They're still doing it. And they were out there, and they had their nets down around 2,000 feet. And they're dragging the bottom, the floor of the ocean, trying to pick up shrimp. And they pull it up. They got cranks to do this and all kinds of mechanical things. And it's sort of heavy coming up. And when it comes up, there's an 18-foot shark. And the shark was pink. It's called a Goblin Shark. It has really two heads. It has a snout that comes out, and the jaw is receded in. But when the shark wants to use the jaw comes out a foot or so, and then you see these ugly teeth. The picture was ugly. All the descriptions I could find in writing of a Goblin Shark, they're ugly. These guys on the shrimp boat said, man, we got to get rid of this thing. And they got it overboard because they were able to tie up the tail somehow and throw it back overboard. Now, here's the interesting things about it. Goblin sharks are not common to our waters in Key West. There was one here 10 years ago, but not since. They are common to Japanese waters. How it got here, we do not know. And in addition to the several fishermen, shrimp fishermen on that boat, it is determined that only about 10 people in the world have ever seen a goblin shark. It is described as a prehistoric fossil. This will give you a better understanding of what this thing looked like when I said ugly, a prehistoric fossil. Well, we have one off the coast of Key West. We live in interesting times. We're all worried about money, medical costs, got to cut here, got to cut our budgets in government. People shouldn't smoke so much, and they've cut back smoking tremendously. Well, here's the story. Monroe County. I'm staying with Key West for a few minutes. Key West is located in Monroe County. Monroe County runs about 150 miles north and south. It runs from Key West up to just past Key Largo or into Homestead someplace. Long and narrow, one long, narrow county. They passed a new law May 1st, just this past week, May 1st, okay? And in effect, it is a smoking ban for county employees. They don't use you can't smoke in there. They say you cannot use tobacco products if you are employed by the county. Now, here's how it's going to work. Starting January 1st, 2015, that's this coming January, the county will no longer hire anyone who uses tobacco products. With regard to existing employees, you can't fire them because they smoke before you pass the law. Well, they've got a year to quit. They've got till January 1st, 2016. If they don't quit, they won't be fired because there are rules about these things. You know, when you pass a law, you can't make it retroactive. If they don't quit, then they're going to be fined. They're going to have a surcharge of $50 a month and also a $50 a month penalty if they get caught lying about their use of tobacco products. However, they do permit smoking. It's okay. You can do it for recreational purposes 5 times in 3 months. All right. Now, why has the county done this? They have done it. They passed the law. The county claims that they will save, or let's approach it this way, that people who smoke, employees who smoke, cost them an extra $753 a year for lost time from work, health benefits, and other things. And they can save money this way. Now, how do you know if somebody's smoking or not smoking? I don't know how they're going to test it. I don't even know if they have this in the law. I couldn't figure it out. But I did a little research. And do you know this is called nicotine testing. They're going to have nicotine testing. And the way you do it is pretty similar to drug testing. You can pee in a cup. You can have blood extracted. Or you can have a saliva swab from the inside of your mouth. The least reliable is the saliva swab. The urine is the standard test. It's easy to do. And it'll definitely show if the person has been smoking in the last 1 to 2 days or has used a tobacco product. Blood is the best. It covers definitely the last 3 to 4 days. It's not an exact science. Sometimes all 3 of these tests are only good till 1 day after. Sometimes they go 10 days. It depends on the age of the person, the weight of the person, how long the person has been smoking, and so forth. Now, to show you that this is the coming thing, apparently, and I don't approve of it, by the way, on the Internet, you can buy a home test. So you can test yourself at home before, your employer, your boss tests you the next day or the next week to determine whether you're showing you've got nicotine in your body. And isn't that amazing? You can buy a test for about $10 or $15. You can buy a test kit, which means this way of government, this law is becoming prevalent. Let me tell you how the law works here quickly. sorry. Hold on a second. I dropped all my notes. Okay, stay with me, my friends. There is no national law. There is no national law. Congress has never passed a law with a smoking ban or anything. It's always been left to the states and localities to determine what they want to do. Florida has done something. We have to start that way. Florida has a statewide smoking ban inside, excluding bars, and excluding a ton of things. You look at the law, and it excludes this and that. You can't smoke inside, but you can smoke inside. We don't. These places are not included in the law, and it goes on and on. And one of the places exempted, and we've had this law, by the way, since July 1st, 2003 in Florida, is a private residence. The law doesn't apply if you're home and you want to smoke. Well, you see it apply in the county law because if you're smoking, period, they don't care where you smoke. If you're even off the job, the law is going to apply to you. The thing with the Florida law, and I don't know if the county of Monroe is aware of this, or maybe this is why they don't talk about a smoking ban, they talk about tobacco products. Because in the law in Florida, the smoking ban law, it also says that the state is running the show, and that local governments are preempted from regulating smoking. What does that mean? That only the state can pass laws regarding smoking. Not a county, not a municipality. The big boss covers, and they do this in Florida a lot, and they have preempted here. So, let me make a couple of more observations on this. Some people drink, and you're not supposed to drink and drive, but it doesn't say, the laws don't say you can't drink at all. It says if you drink up to a certain limit in your blood, like in New York State it's 0.08, then you're drunk. But under that, maybe one drink, you can do it, you won't be drunk, you can operate a motor vehicle. Well, how did they come out now with this smoking ban where you can't smoke at all? I mean, if they're going to do it there, then the drinking thing should be you can't drink and drive at all. Not that you can drink up to a certain point. Why not permit people? It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander to smoke up to a certain point. The other thing is this, and this is a point I wish to make. You may think I'm crazy, but I fear this is what is coming. I fear this because we're worried about these medical costs all the time. You got a grade 4 or number 4 type cancer that is not curable. You will be dead within a year. And so the government says, why should we spend the money on you trying to save you? Why should we keep you in the hospital with all these expensive painkillers and do all these tests? So we're going to give you a choice. We're going to give you a happy pill. You take it, you go to sleep, you never wake up again. You're dead. Or you have to suffer the whole year without any medication. We will not pay any of your bills. It's a way to save money. They're going to die anyhow. Let's get rid of them early on. This is Orwell. To me, this is George Orwell, and this is 1984, and we're going there. I am so afraid. All right, well, you know, I have a longer show, but I got stuck with the church and with this stuff, and that's really my show for tonight. Remember, I got a book out there. If you enjoy what I talk about, buy my book, The World Upside Down, by Louis Patrone. It's on Amazon.com and on BarnesandNoble.com. You can buy it for email reading, or you can buy it in a soft cover. It's not expensive. If you don't enjoy what I'm talking about here or find it interesting, don't buy my book, because it's a reiteration, or I approach problems like this and discuss them as I do on this show. I also want to add, because I know most of you who listen to this show, this Blog Talk Radio, listen to it during the week. It's archived, and you're picking it up on the archive. You don't listen to it at this moment from 9 to 9:30. But during the week, I know over 2,000 of you are going to listen to this show because I get the numbers, and I'm happy for that. I want you to know it's also available on YouTube now. We put it on YouTube. Okay, that's it for the week. I thank you for joining me. Have a good week. I'll speak with you again next week.